Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We know is in. We know that Oregon is playing in the Big Ten championship game, almost certainly against Ohio State. Whoever wins that game is in. Big Ten champ is in. SEC champ, Georgia versus the winner of Texas, Texas A&M. Winner of that game is in, and we can get into hypotheticals after. ACC, this is crazy. SMU has clinched a spot in the ACC championship game. They are 10-1 going into their final game of the season. What has to happen now? If Miami wins on Saturday, they play at Syracuse. If Miami wins on Saturday, Miami will play SMU in the ACC championship game. The winner there goes to the college football playoff. If Miami loses, Clemson would go to the ACC championship game. Remember, Clemson's ACC schedule is done. So even if they lose to South Carolina, it has no impact on if they play for an ACC championship game. So really the game that you have to monitor in the ACC this weekend is Miami at Syracuse. Big 12. Not even going to get into how crazy it is, but there's 4 teams tied in the loss column: Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, and Colorado. To make it as simple as we can, if Arizona State and Iowa State win, they are both in. It certainly gets more complicated from there. The only thing I would say, I know so many people care about Colorado. If Colorado basically needs a lot of help. They need 2 of those teams to lose. If they win, they would be in. Otherwise, there's really not a direct pathway if everybody wins. So that's the setup. Obviously, Boise in the group of 5. So we have those 5 automatic bids. And I think at this point, we can start slotting teams in, assuming nothing crazy happens. I think Indiana gets in even after the loss. I think as long as they beat Purdue, doesn't matter they lost to Ohio State, doesn't matter the margin of victory, who cares? They are in. Outside of Indiana, Penn State, all they got to do, barely beat Minnesota, held on for dear life, fake punt that if they messed up probably would have lost that game. Doesn't matter. If Penn State wins this weekend, they are in. Tennessee, win this weekend against Vandy, which will not be an easy game. Win that game, you're in. And then on top of that, Notre Dame beat USC this weekend, win, and you're in. So there's 5 automatic bids. Penn State, Indiana, Tennessee, and Notre Dame. If they win, they are in. Ohio State or Oregon, whoever loses the Big Ten championship game, whoever wins, they are in. So that's now 10 teams. Where it gets interesting is those final 2 spots, okay? And I'll try to be quick, and I'll try to make as much sense as I possibly can, and I don't know if I will, but here goes. One of those spots, I feel pretty confident will go to the winner of Texas and Texas A&M. Because whoever wins the Texas A&M game is going to the SEC championship game. The committee has basically said the loser of the SEC championship game is not going to be eliminated. Now, the cleanest pathway, or if you're a fan of another school hoping to get your school in, I think you got to root for Texas this weekend, okay? Because if Texas loses that game, that would mean that Texas A&M is going to the SEC championship game. Now, I'm not sure that I believe that a 4-loss Texas A&M that does not win in the SEC championship game should get in. So to even backtrack, and I know this is a little confusing, I'm just trying to make as much sense of it as I can. So as I said, there's basically 10 spots guaranteed. I'll reset it. The 5 automatic bids plus the loser of the Big Ten championship game is going to get in. That's probably going to be either that is almost certainly going to be either Ohio State or Oregon. Georgia, I think, is in no matter what. Big Ten, I'm even confusing myself now. So basically there's 10 spots, and the winner of Texas A&M, I think, is in good shape. What would be interesting, if Texas A&M were to beat Texas and then lose in the SEC championship game, that sets up a wild conundrum for this reason. First off, do we put in a Texas A&M team that at that point would have 4 losses, okay? So Texas A&M lost to Notre Dame early in the season. They lost at South Carolina a few weeks ago. They lost at Auburn this past week. And if they get to the SEC championship game, they would lose to Georgia in this hypothetical. Now, if they lose to Texas this weekend, they're out. But if they lose in the SEC championship game, I don't know what the committee does, because the committee would be punishing A&M for playing an extra game. The other thing is, if you're not going to put Texas A&M in, does that mean that you put Texas in that just lost to Texas A&M? What I think becomes even more interesting, let's say Texas wins on Saturday against Texas A&M. That eliminates Texas A&M, and that basically means four teams from the Big Ten, four teams from the Big Ten, three from the SEC. It'd be Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. Notre Dame, the Big 12 champ, the ACC champ, all that. And then that 12 spot becomes fascinating, okay? The 12 spot, then it sets up for a lot of fascinating conversations. One, I think the team that would actually be in the best spot in that hypothetical is the loser of the ACC championship game, especially if it's SMU or Miami, okay? If it's SMU or Miami, both those teams would be 11-2, lose in a conference championship game. You'd be punishing them for losing. So I think that team would be in great shape. I think it's also worth noting, depending on how the ACC championship game goes, I've seen some talk, people trying to make the argument for Clemson. I don't really know that I totally see the Clemson argument, just because basically their best win would be over a South Carolina team this coming weekend that's currently 8-4. They just don't have a lot of great wins on their schedule. Nobody currently ranked in the top 25. I don't know. I don't really know what Clemson's argument would be. So to me, this is the point. Just pay attention to what happens in the ACC championship game this week, and then I think, as importantly, see what happens this weekend with Texas and Texas A&M. If Texas wins, it creates a very interesting scenario at number 12, because again, would it be the ACC runner-up? By the way, does it bring back in 3-loss SEC teams? Is that how Alabama gets back in the conversation? How Ole Miss gets back in the conversation? So yeah, that's basically it. I think I just spent more time confusing myself than anybody else, so I apologize for that. But the bottom line is, it looks like we're going to get 4 Big Ten teams, probably 3 SEC teams. If Texas A&M were to beat Texas and lose in the SEC championship game, it sets up an interesting conversation. But I think the big winners from Saturday, maybe that's the best way I should put it. The big winners from Saturday, with all the chaos, with Ole Miss and Alabama losing, truthfully, the biggest winners, in my opinion, probably Tennessee. All you got to do is beat Vandy, and you're not going to the SEC championship game. Biggest winner is Tennessee. Second biggest winner is probably Indiana, because Indiana now doesn't really matter. As long as you beat Purdue, you're in. And then I think finally, the ACC is probably the third big winner, because I think there's a pathway for a second team in the ACC right now. Big 12, whoever wins that conference championship is in. Probably going to be Arizona State versus Iowa State. And then there's chaos and carnage from there.